Are we on, Trev? Are we on? Hello everyone, and welcome to this yet another summer scorcher episode of Beer Sweden TV. Now today we are going back to the very beginnings of beer with the style of beer that we're going to try today. Now this, I have to warn people, this is a hardcore XXX episode of Beer Sweden TV, and I warn you, I want lights, I want you know, put one of those crosses on it, Trev, because we want to warn people, if you have a nervous disposition, if you're under the age of 18, I do recommend you look away for the next few minutes, because this, as I say, is pretty smutty stuff. Now the beer that we're going to be trying today, before I start talking about it, have a little zoom into that, Trev. This is the beer that we're going to be trying. It is a Gueuze style. Throw all the stats up, please, so that people know where to buy the Systembolaget. It's a Gueuze style of beer. It's called Oud, which is old, as I understand it. Sounds familiar anyway. BSL, which is a old style Gueuze. This is a Belgian beer. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Gueuzes because it's quite a complicated process, but it's a fascinating one. If you've been following the blog, you'll know that I love the stories behind beers almost as much as beers themselves. I think that's what's so fun about it, and I don't think there's a better story in the beer world than Gueuzes and lambics. So let's start at the very beginning. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Trev, because I'm thirsty, because it's like 800 degrees out here. I'm going to open this. Now have a look. First of all, shithouse mass. This stuff is lively. Did you see that? Like a shot out of a gun. Obviously quite a lot of pressure in the bottle, Trev. Trev, actually, you jumped about 3 metres in the air there.
Wasn't expecting that.
Have you ever thought about sort of competing? Now, obviously it's a corked, although very momentarily, it's a corked bottle. A lot of pressure in this one. I think it's probably because it's, you know, obviously come out of a fridge and it's come into the warm air, and my God, it's lively stuff. But anyway, let's rewind a little bit and talk about Gueuzes as a style. Now, first of all, Gueuze, have I pronounced that correctly? I'm not sure. I've met lots of people during the years of beers that I've been involved, and I get a lot of different sort of pronunciations, but I'm sticking with Gueuze. I think it sounds about right. But what is it? What is Gueuze? Well, the fundamental difference between Gueuzes and any of the other beer styles you've probably tried before is the fact that Gueuzes, or lambic beers, which is the root of this beer, they are spontaneously fermented, Trev. Do you know what that means?
No.
What it means is that traditional beer, or say traditional beers, but conventional beers, the beers that you drink a lot today, they've actually had yeast pitched into the beer that is very refined. The brewers have spent a lot of time, decades, sometimes generations upon generations, refining this yeast so that they know exactly what it's going to do to the beer. Produces almost like a house flavours. So they spend a lot of time and effort actually cultivating this yeast, sort of, you know, tweaking it so that it produces exactly the flavours that they want and the effect that they want on their beer time after time. This beer, Gueuzes, lambics, complete opposite. This is like a party where all the yeast is invited. So basically what they do is they brew the beer and then they leave it in the open for the wild yeast in the air, because there's wild yeast everywhere, Trev. There's wild yeast on your camera.
They fly from Canada, don't they?
There's wild yeast on my hands. They fly from Canada. They fly from everywhere. But they come into the beer and they attack it. Now there's a certain part of Brussels or Belgium where these beers are produced. It's to the southwest of Brussels, and it is an area that's actually got that unique makeup of microflora, which makes it absolutely ideal for brewing this type of beer. So basically they leave it open. Normally they're open slats in the roof so that the air can get in, and these yeast, these microorganisms, come in and they start munching on the beer, munching on the sugars in the beer, and obviously converting that into alcohol and these other sorts of flavours that you're going to get. They've done a research actually, and they reckon that roughly 35 different strains of yeast are actually found in most Gueuzes and lambics. That's an awful lot, and one in particular that comes up time and time again, and the one you'll probably hear about the most, it's called Brettanomyces, shortened often to Brett. And a lot of beer experts say that they get a lot of Brett sort of character. But what is Brett? Well,
can I have a butcher's at the colour maybe, just to see?
yeah,
so
let's have a little look at the
close
colour.
up.
Let's have a look at the colour, because it is very different. With a lot of, well, we'll say with a lot, with all of these beers, you're going to get an extremely cloudy, halite colour. This is unfiltered, unpasteurised. This is raw beer. Again, let me go back to the beginning so that we get this right. Gueuzes are effectively blended lambic. So lambic is really the style that we're talking about here. Lambic beers are made with always with about 30% wheat and 70% malted barley. Okay, that's very, very important. The second thing that's always important to remember about these styles of beers is that they use hops, yes, but they use old hops. Do you know why they do that, Trev?
No.
They use old hops because they don't really want the hoppy flavours and smells coming through. They want to use hops as a preservative only. So they tend to use old hops.
What,
in the
second-hand
beer.
hops?
No, but old hops. So they keep them and they let them sort of dry out and they sort of, you know, get a little bit older. It adds a unique flavour to the beer, but it is unconventional. It's not really what modern breweries, you know, or the beers that you're normally trying are attempting to achieve. So they use it for preservative value and for nothing else. Okay, so very, very different. What they then do is they take the beer and they age it in wooden casks too, and the microflora, the yeast within the casks, also start attacking the beer. So you get a secondary fermentation going on in the cask. This is a very unusual way of brewing beer. Okay, got that so far? Complicated, isn't it? Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. Gueuzes are effectively a blend of 1-year-old lambic and 2 to 3 year old lambic. Why do they do that? Well, the young lambic, of course, is extremely aggressive. There's still yeast in there, so there's still sugar in there, should I say, residual sugar in the beer, so the yeast is still attacking it. Very, very lively, very, very spritzy. The older lambics have attenuated, so the yeast has actually eaten most of the sugars, and they are producing very sour, sort of acidic notes to them. And so the blender of Gueuzes has to do a very clever job. He has to mix young with old. Too much old, the beer's going to be a bit too sour, a little bit too, sort of woody and cidery, and maybe sort of acidic. Too young, and you might get an explosion out of a bottle because the beer is actually too fizzy and it's not complex enough. Okay, so it's a real skill for a Gueuze blender, for a lambic blender, to be able to find just the right balance. Now, this Gueuze in particular from BSL is got a lot of form. This one, Trev. It's a championship winner at the World Beer Awards, so it carries a lot of form, this beer. And it's one of the ones that is actually quite widely available in the Systembolaget. So let's give it a whirl. And what do you smell? Straight away, funky notes. What's that to me? Barnyard, horses, wet blanket, wood. A little bit of asphalt. You know, like licking a road, Trev. Ever done that? Mm. Yeah. That's in here too. Stinky cheese, that's there too. But this lovely sort of lemon kick as well. And not just the lemon juice, but the actual zest of a lemon. Like you've really chewed it. There's a lot of that in there too. This is 6%. Wow, this is 6% beer. But it's got this amazing acidity that comes in straight away. It's very difficult for me to describe this beer to you. I recommend what you do. I dare you to go to the Systembolaget, buy a bottle of this, try it. When you've tried it, write to me on the blog and tell me what you think about it. It is so different. It's called the Champagne of Brussels, or Brussels Champagne, and rightfully so. Serve it in a champagne glass as an appetizer at your next dinner party. I promise you, people will talk. I don't know what they'll say, but they'll talk about it. Serve it with soft cheeses like Bries, with a sort of, you know, with a rind to them, or maybe even a nice strong hard cheddar. This stuff will offset it beautifully. It's lemon, it's lime, it's wood, it's vinegar, it's musty cider, it's sour. It's all those things. Score, Trev, difficult to say. 4.5 out of 5. Trev?
For what reason?
Trev, look, eyebrows. Because, I'll tell you why. Because this is the most underrated summer beer out there. It's got that refreshment factor, it's got that shock factor, it's got that XXX factor that we're after.
It's an experience.
It's an experience. It's an experience. And for that, I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5. What more can I say? Cheers and beers.